Hey darling, it's research time. I spent a few hours breaking apart this study into bite-sized chunks so that you don't have to, and you can learn about depth of experiencing. This is really awesome concept, and it's one that EFT really capitalizes on. Low depth of experiencing would be like referring to inner experience in an abstract, really impersonal way, or maybe like an object in the room, where as you go higher up, people start to mention and talk about inner experience, but they're not really engaging with it more than that. And as you go higher up, people are starting to go inward and get more detailed in their description and exploration of inner experience. And then even at higher levels, people are intentionally going inward to try to work through and explore and figure out difficulties with their inner experience to find new resolution for their problems. At the highest level, someone is making meaning out of discoveries they've had in their inner experience that have implications for their well-being and their symptoms and even their broader life. In experiential therapy, we're trying to edge people up toward the higher ends of this scale. That can have a positive impact on symptoms from like depression or even their self-esteem. And that's exactly what these authors looked at in their study back in 2003. These researchers used 34 participants. They all got assigned to an experiential therapy, whether it was client-centered therapy or process experiential therapy, which is what EFT used to be called. All of these participants were diagnosed with depression. 14 of them were diagnosed with a personality disorder. How do we even examine depth of experiencing as it occurs in therapy sessions? Well, they took a session. Boop. So pretend this is the duration of a recording in a session. We know that someone's not going to necessarily be engaged with their emotions all throughout this session. There might be small points in time, episodes, where they're experiencing their emotion. So let's just chop those up. Okay, there's a segment. Nope, that one can go. There's a segment. What classified the segments that we threw away versus the ones we actually kept if it mentioned a specific situation and a named emotion in relation to that situation, or the expected kind of behavioral or action tendency that would come out of that emotion. A crow swooped down and tried to grab my sandwich, and I felt scared. Or a crow swept down, tried to grab my sandwich, and I screeched and ran away. Okay, that has the minimum 2 requirements. But optionally, it could include a couple other elements. Like it could include what the person needed or their concern. This could be like, I just needed to get to safety, or I just needed to get to cover from that crow. Or it could have included their interpretation of the situation or themselves. It's like, that crow's dangerous, or I'm in danger. So if it had these elements, it classified as an emotion episode. And some of these were shorter and some of them were longer. They could tell when the emotional episode was over, when the topic switched or there was another emotion being talked about. We have all these wonderful segments of the therapy session. Then they gave each of them ratings of the level of depth of experiencing. So there's a 5, there's a 1, there's a 2. So now we can find out what someone's level of experiencing was for a particular session at the beginning of therapy and toward the end of therapy. This way they could compare them. People probably come into therapy with some existing tendency or skill already at their depth of experiencing. But they wanted to account for this and find out, well, by the end of an experiential therapy, toward the second to last session, what were their experiencing scores and how did that relate to depression, other symptoms, and self-esteem? In the 4th session, all of the participants were asked to complete a questionnaire about the quality of the working alliance between the therapist and the client. This is kind of like asking, hey, how much are we agreeing on the tasks and the goal of therapy? And does it seem like we're working toward those well? Because they also wanted to compare those ratings for the working alliance with the depth of experiencing ratings. What these researchers did to compare all of these things was hierarchical linear regression. It's okay. The more you say it, the more comfortable you get with it. Hierarchical linear regression. Okay, actually that doesn't even matter, because instead I can just show you this Venn diagram. Boo! How much prettier is that? Doesn't it make you feel warm and fuzzy? Kind of nostalgic even, like when you pressed your face against the glass of one of those really old TVs and you just saw the little pixels. This Venn diagram is really helpful for understanding hierarchical linear regression because it let the researchers compare how much the depth of experiencing at the beginning or end of therapy or the working alliance explained symptoms or self-esteem at the end of therapy. I tried looking for a program that would let me do like proportional Venn diagrams, but it just turned into a big waste of time. So instead, The visual of this is not accurate, but the numbers are accurate, and I'm taking them directly from the paper. And here's what they found. When they put everything together, the depth of experiencing at the end of therapy explained 14% of those self-esteem scores. I know if this was a Rotten Tomatoes score, we would pass that movie up in a heartbeat, but this is science here. And so we take this. It's like, yay, good. We can explain 14% of something. That's more than nothing, which is a good thing. It's so funny to say that out loud, but it's true. The finding I'm most excited to tell you about is that for psychological symptoms at the end of therapy, depth of experiencing at the end of therapy explained 21% of that relationship, whereas the working alliance between the participant and the therapist explained only 8%. This direct comparison is really helpful because it lets us conclude that, okay, there's something more than just this working alliance that explains symptoms at the end of treatment. In fact, depth of experiencing at the end of an experiential therapy explained a lot. Actually, 21% is pretty good. Now I'm going to tell you something that you don't know you want me to say, but I know you want me to actually say it. It's this big C word. You want me to say that depth of experiencing at the end of therapy caused these reduced symptoms, but I can't say that. This data doesn't let me conclude that. I know you want me to say it. I want to say it too, because I love experiential therapies, but we can't say it. We have to talk about relationships. High depth of experiencing at the end of therapy was related to lower symptoms at the end of therapy. Related. And so we can't say that depth of experiencing caused this decrease in symptoms. So what does this mean? Well, when you're ready to earn your PhD, you can do your dissertation that establishes some causal relationships between these variables. Come on, just do it. Take the plunge, get that PhD. I know you're not going to. So instead, I guess we'll just have to save money with you not earning a PhD. It sounds a lot better when we put it that way. So instead, I'll just keep making these videos. On to the next paper.